I was minding my own business, peacefully sleeping when I'd gotten the worst awakening. I felt eyes staring down, and my mind climbed out of my dreams. When I woke, confused, I let out a scream when I saw a pair of red eyes staring down at me in the early morning sun. Cursing, I tumbled out of bed, banging my elbow painfully against the floor. "How did you get in here?" I shouted, still groggy.
Do you really think a normal lock can keep me out? Come into the kitchen. I have a job for you.
A cool voice answered back. The man who so rudely broke into my temporary penthouse was named Silverman, and he was my boss. He was also the Silver King, but I was still not entirely sure what that entailed. As far as I could figure, he looked over all the supernatural creatures of the world and made sure they were all following a personal set of rules. Glaring at him, he left the room so I could get properly dressed. A brief explanation of my new life is that on New Year's Eve, all my past debts caught up with me. I nearly died, however was saved when I offered myself to Silverman and a creature named Fex. In order to save that monster, he fused inside my body and remained in the back of my mind ever since. Fex was able to take over my body at will. However, aside from avenging himself, he hadn't really done so. Because of merging with something not human, I was tougher to kill, and if I practiced enough, I could get access to a vast amount of magic Fex had hidden away. Aside from all that, I didn't look very powerful. My eyes turned a golden color that could be passed off as a very light brown. I looked like just a regular black hair, somewhat fit guy you could find anywhere. Nothing special about me at all. I did wake up with long fingernails, almost like claws that first night, and made certain to file them down every day. Silverman was waiting for me and did not offer me any coffee. My new lifestyle gained me access to a fortune, but I still bought instant coffee, not liking the taste of the expensive brands. Apparently that was not good enough for my new boss. He was sipping from a mug I didn't recognize, and made from a complex coffee setup I didn't have the first clue how it worked.
How have you two been getting along?
He asked with a pleasant smile. He gave me the creeps. Any normal person would be charmed by him, and Fex too. In the back of my mind, I felt him practically wagging his tail just being in the same room as his idol. I almost felt embarrassed. I was scared of Fex at one point.
We've been practicing magic,
I said with a small yawn.
We bought babies to try out spells on,
Fex said, taking over for a moment. It was so unnerving having a voice that wasn't my own coming from my mouth, I almost forgot to correct what he just said. Beanie Babies. We've been buying Beanie Babies, I corrected, face flushing slightly. At least that gave away what time frame this all took place in. Those toys were the big craze. Fex greatly liked the jellyfish and frog ones. To cover up the fact he bought at least a few dozen because he enjoyed them, Fex lied to me, saying they would be good material for magic practice. We'd been trying out a spell to make them move and float for 2 months. Mastering one simple spell took me so long, I was worried I would be 1,000 before I knew anything useful. In fact, a jellyfish should still be floating around the penthouse while we spoke, and I looked around for it before Silverman drew my attention back to him.
Like I said, I have a job for you. I'm far too busy to wait for you to become more useful to me. I need you to tie up some loose ends.
The comment stung. I was hired as a hitman. However, my last job was nothing more than a wellness check, and I was pretty against actually killing anything. It was a major trait I needed to outgrow before living up to my job title. What do you need me to do? Check up on a little old lady monster? Go pick up your mail? That sort of thing?
No, I wouldn't trust you with either of those things. Especially the mail. I have very highly trained creatures on that task. What I need you for is to investigate a lab for me. It seems humans may have created a supernatural creature. You need to pass judgment. If it's feral, kill it. If it is not, kidnap it and bring it to me.
Silverman explained, and poured himself a second cup of coffee that might cost more than some people's monthly wages. A lab? Like a super secret government lab? That sort of thing? I asked. Silverman snorted, and even Fex made a poor attempt at hiding a laugh. I was annoyed. It was a reasonable question, and they had no reason to mock it.
Super secret and government do not mix. You honestly think a government could keep anything hidden? They couldn't even keep the Roswell forget about that.
Silverman quickly cut his words short, and took a very long sip, hoping I didn't notice what incident he was about to refer to. I may be part supernatural creature, but I still wasn't privy to most information. He continued.
No. Supernatural creatures are not known to most countries' governments. Only very small countries are aware of them on that level. The lab belongs to the hunters.
He stopped speaking, as if he just explained everything. We both stared at each other, him waiting for me to reply back. This was my first time hearing anything about hunters. His face started to fall, and when he started to become aware, I had no clue what he was talking about.
Vex didn't tell you about the hunters yet? What have you both been doing these past few months?
I did not even have time to defend myself as a multicolored pastel jellyfish drifted into the kitchen and between us. Swatting it away, I wanted to explain myself for my lack of knowledge. Silverman didn't exactly hand out information, and Fex was mostly the strong silent type. With the pair being my only source of information about this new world, of course I would be behind. Silverman let out a long sigh, rolling his red eyes.
Hunters are an underground organization with several different branches. They hunt down any kind of supernatural creature to kill them. They're all human, but use magic and other unnatural tools to kill monsters. If a creature breaks a rule, and I'm too busy to take care of it myself, I rely on them to hunt it down. I offer bounties from time to time if needed for an extra bit of motivation.
Silverman explained. That made sense. If there were monsters out there killing people, there should be people killing monsters. How come I'm not working with them? They might be able to teach me a bit faster, and I'm sure it could be of use, I asked. Silverman shook his head, poorly hiding his disappointment.
The hunter branches were made because people wanted to avenge loved ones they lost. Some are in it for the money and thrills, but most are there to slaughter every supernatural creature on this planet. You are half monster. They could not work with you, and I'm certain would find a way to kill you in the first month.
I nodded my head, understanding why working with them would be a no-go situation. There may be some in the organization that wouldn't care about me being half something else, but others would not be so forgiving. I may be tougher to kill, but it wasn't impossible. Plus, they already had a head start on magic skills over me. If they could block Fex from taking over my body, I would be a sitting duck. Wait, you want me to go against that entire organization that wants me dead based on what I am? I don't think I'm ready to charge in and kidnap a monster from a heavily guarded lab, I commented, feeling suddenly stressed and tense. Wait, why are you even asking me to sneak in? Aren't you on friendly terms with them if you give them a hit list sometimes? Why not just ask for the creature? Silverman sighed again, looking as if he was dealing with a child. In a way, he was. I could feel this man had countless years behind that middle-aged face. I only had a few months of knowing monsters were real.
They insulted me. They thought they could capture a creature to use as a weapon behind my back. If they just asked, I would have approved the plan. But they didn't. They not only went ahead and dabbled in the world I rule over, they thought they could keep it hidden from me. The best punishment I could think of is to have their creation get stolen right from under their pesky noses.
At least he wasn't asking me to murder them all for what he saw as a slight against him. Killing a feral creature that was a danger to others sounded like something I could manage. But sneaking inside a lab to do it? I looked down at my hand, remembering how it felt when we used too much magic and nearly fried every nerve in my body permanently. Fex may have a vast amount of magic, but my body couldn't handle it. We slowly worked our way up to a better tolerance over the past few months. At that point, I may be able to use 1% of Fex's magic without destroying my body. I was human, and Even after being gifted such power, I still had the human traits that almost cancel it all out.
I'm confident that you two shall do fine. Fex can just take over your body whenever you get in trouble. Besides, Fex is a very good spellcaster, and can figure out a way inside without being seen. Yes, I am very sneaky.
Fex chipped in, proudly taking over for a moment. And still, I didn't have too much faith in myself. The last job we did was only a success because the demon we tried to rescue saved himself with his own strength. Still, if Fex and Silverman thought we could do this job, I should follow in their footsteps.
And it really needs to be you too. If I ask any of my knights, they are bound to just murder every human in the lab and be done with it. That shall not go over well, and will most likely end up in a war between creatures of the night and the hunters. You two are the only ones who do not care for killing humans.
I was hired as a hitman, and yet I was known for not killing. I was really bad at my job. Knights? You have knights? I asked, learning something else. Silverman let his face drop again, looking at me in disbelief that I wasn't aware of his knights until then. He didn't say it out loud, but his expression clearly said, I'm a king, of course I have knights. I was a bad hitman, and very bad at being a supernatural creature, being unaware of so many things. Silverman left after he gave us the location of the lab and reviewed our job task. Fex felt stressed that I performed poorly in front of his king, but it wasn't my fault I didn't know anything we discussed. We practiced for our covert job by looking over whatever magic supplies were left over from the month of practicing. Because magic drained my body if I used it too much, I could create spells by using the power locked inside items. Magic chalk for drawing spells, parts of creatures that still held power, paper that held power and made spells more efficient, and packing tape I assumed did the same thing. We packed all the material needed into a handbag shaped like a frog. Fex had picked it out, and he so rarely asked for anything, I gave in and bought the goofy thing, thinking he wouldn't actually use it. He had done something to it so it would store 40 pounds of items inside the small space, and now I was stuck with it on jobs. I watched as Fex took over my body to draw a magic circle that would transport us to the lab's location. My heart pounded in my chest and my shoulders felt tight. I remember the pain from the last job. Unlike normal bodies, mine didn't go into shock to spare me from the pain. If it did, I hadn't found the pain limit, which made my brain shut down. I prayed I never did. I should be fine on this mission, but I still felt stressed and nervous. As the circle became closer to being finished, I thought I was going to puke because of how terrified I was. I needed to put on a brave face. I promised myself when I took this job, I would use these powers to protect and save creatures like Fex that had been harmed by selfish humans. This monster in the lab fit that bill perfectly. It was made just to kill others. I needed to hold up to that promise. If this creature was feral, putting it out of its misery would save others and itself. Telling myself all that, I was still frightened as we took a step inside the circle drawn in chalk, feet not meeting solid ground for a few seconds. My stomach lurched, and I found myself no longer inside the penthouse, but in a forest on top of a hill, looming over a square industrial building. Ducking down, trying to hide, just in case I was seen, I took in deep breaths, trying to settle my nerves. Officially, we were on our second job of being a hitman, and I couldn't have been any more nervous over what was waiting for me. Do you need some help?
I do not require assistance. Thank you very much.
For the past 20 minutes, I've been watching as Fex fiddled with a wire trap we nearly tripped over, while trying to make our way down the forest hill to the lab below. The building held highly classified information about how the hunters were able to create a supernatural creature, along with the creature itself. The traps in the forest surrounding the building were meant to keep the creature inside, as well as unwanted visitors like us out. The wire trap was simple. Nearly invisible lines strung around trees at different heights, all connecting to one square box nailed to a tree, poorly hidden by moss piled on top. Fex was able to get the top off the box, but just kept touching the strings inside instead of trying to cut them. What are you having issues with? I don't know much about magic, but maybe brainstorming could help. Only recently, I could start sensing when something was magically charged. If we tripped over any of these wires, literally anything could happen. Fex paused, thinking over my offer.
Yes, perhaps you could help. This trap was set by humans. Do you remember some of the first things I told you about magic? It is based on the intentions of the one who created the spell, instead of logic. I cannot think around the human intentions that created this, and have become stuck on how to proceed,
Fex explained. Before he was fused into my body and took up a corner of my mind, Fex was a large, dark-furred creature. At first, I thought of him as some sort of dog, but now, after getting a better look at his snout, I thought of him to be more lion-like. A long, flowing mane tumbled out from a hood he always wore to cover his eyes, but left his mouth free to attack if needed. He may be kinder and have a personality fairly close to being human compared to other creatures, but it was very clear he lacked a human thought process. Can you just cut all the wires somehow? I started. I felt him become a little surprised, as if he didn't think of that obvious answer. He took out a pair of very small scissors meant for thread from the frog bag. My fingers barely fit into them. I asked him why he'd brought a pair so small, and was told the material they were made from held magic better than any other type of scissors he'd found. Using them, he snipped one string, and waited a few seconds before he started to snip the rest inside the box.
Just cutting them? What a silly human thought,
he was muttering to himself as he used my body to snip away. I often forgot we were two different species, and moments like this reminded me. I couldn't help but wonder what he would have attempted to do if we didn't have the small scissors in the bag. Did you really have no other ideas of how to disarm this trap? I asked.
I was going to bite the string to snap them, but my head would not fit inside the box,
Fex admitted. How could he be so smart and yet so dumb? I regrettably started to understand his train of thought. If the wires were cursed to explode when someone cut them, they may not do anything if they were bitten apart. When it came to magic, wording was important. Because the trap didn't go off when the strings were cut, the creator of the trap may have only been able to rig it to explode when something tripped it, and nothing else. When the box was fully disarmed, we kept walking through the woods on the lookout for more wires and other kinds of traps. It was a bit strange referring to myself as we all the time. Fex was there. I just was the only one who could interact with him. We were a team sharing one body, and that could be troublesome at times. The progress to the building below was slow. The sun long since set by the time we arrived into the parking lot. Shouldn't we be worried about cameras or people seeing us? All the nervous energy from before came back to me. My hands felt sweaty and a little shaky being so close to the building.
I created 2 charms and attached them to Greg. One keeps human eyes from seeing us, and the other keeps cameras from seeing us. However, the spell is broken if a human bumps into us or interacts in any way.
Greg. Fex named the frog-shaped handbag. Saving his life was starting to feel like a bad idea. He was slowly gaining the same interest as a teenage girl. If this kept up, he would lose any kind of reputation his monstrous form gave him. Looking over the bag, I saw 2 charms attached I didn't spot earlier. They were small, glittery, metal, bacon and fried eggs shaped charms, possibly from a necklace. Fex officially lost any kind of intimidation he once held. There was no way he picked those charms out because the material held magic better than others. He had a preference for cute things. It was a miracle I didn't notice that fact before. No sense bringing it up now. We had a job to finish.
How shall we enter? Use a spell? Dig down through the foundation? Break down a wall?
Fex suggested. We could pick a lock on one of the doors. I did not know how to pick any locks, but thought it may be easier to do with magic than the other 2 ideas Fex offered. Moments after our eyes fell on a door, it opened. Two men dressed in lab coats came outside and used a brick to prop open the door. They stood discussing their work hours at first, then got onto the topic of which girls in the office they preferred. They couldn't see us, and if we were very quiet, we could sneak right past them. Careful not to disturb the gravel, with each step we slowly made our way over to the open door, as the workers took their time. One woman had a lot of positive qualities they wanted to speak about, and even with us moving at a snail's pace, we got past them inside the building.
"We are very sneaky,"
Fex said proudly inside my head, so only I could hear. It was pure luck, nothing else. We got inside the building, and now needed to find where they were holding the creature. Silverman did not give us any information about it. We didn't know what we were looking for, and started to walk down the empty hallway, looking to see if there were any maps posted. Our footsteps echoed against the white walls. Nothing we could do about that. If someone came to investigate, we could just stop walking until they assumed they were hearing something else and leave. Finding no maps, Fex suggested we find a room with a computer inside. With more sneaking around, we went from door to door, opening them a crack until we found an empty work area with a screen of a monitor illuminating the room. Shutting the door behind us, I double-checked and made sure the room was empty. "Do you know how to hack a computer?" I asked Fex inside the back of my head. The monitor screen showed it was locked out, and we needed a password and a user code. I shuffled around papers on the desk, looking for any hint of what to type in. Fex, not being human, suggested something I never would have thought of.
"Why not ask the machine?"
Taking control of my arm, he rustled around inside the frog handbag that was hanging off my shoulder. Pulling out a strip of tape, he put it on the glass screen of the monitor. This was back in the days of glass screens. Drawing a circle, Fex drew up a spell I wasn't aware of. If you could read the writing around the circle, you could easily break down and understand the spell. The problem was there wasn't a common language creatures of the night used. Some of the most common words had the same symbol and overlapped with other languages. I still haven't learned a single word, and Fex didn't even know where to start on how to teach me. For now, I let him write the spells, because I didn't know a single word of his language, and I couldn't draw the perfect circle needed for the spell to work. The spell was finished, and the writing disappeared from the tape. Peeling the tape off, he put it in the garbage. From what he told me, writing spells on tape caused them to stick better. Whatever that meant.
"Try talking to it, and ask for some information. You're good at talking."
Fex was right. In my past, I was good at sweet-talking. It was the only skill my good-for-nothing father left behind. And the thing that got me in so much trouble, that I nearly died and ended up being fused with a monster. Mind you, I did consider Fex as a friend, and my life could be much worse. But I didn't want to try sweet-talking anything ever again. Fex was being considerate, trying to let me feel included by setting me up to use my one skill I had to offer. It felt a little silly talking to a computer. I still leaned in to get on the same level as if I was talking to someone shorter than myself. The screen looked no different from before the spell Fex used. I just needed to trust him. The computer could now hear what I was saying. "Could you please bring up a map for us? We're trying to save the creature this lab made. If it's being used, we're going to take it away so the hunters can't force it to be used as a weapon. If it's already a weapon, we want to make sure it can't hurt anyone else." I spoke, keeping my voice low. We couldn't be seen, but still could be heard by anyone passing the room. For a long time, nothing happened, as I listened to the hum of the computer. Finally, the login screen went away. Folders started to pop up, and a map flickered on screen. I jumped when a printer came to life beside the computer. In the next few minutes, we had a map of each floor, and on the last page, a small note of good luck was printed in the corner.
"Asking nicely. What a great idea,"
Fex commented, sounding proud of me. I really didn't do anything special, but for a creature that lived based on a favor system, getting something for nothing must have seemed impressive to him. We'd been friends for months, but he still wasn't aware that people normally would do something for you if you just asked. I jumped again when the door to the room opened. The screen went back to the login name. Shoving the papers inside the handbag, I held my breath as a man came walking past. He couldn't see me, but could sense someone in the room. My heart nearly stopped when he looked right at me. I could smell the cigarette smoke and recognized him as one of the men who left the door open for a smoke break. If he was so lax on keeping doors open, he might not notice his workspace had been gone through. The longest few minutes of my life passed, and he finally sat down to get back to work. It was tricky opening the door and slipping back out into the hallway unnoticed. I already felt drained, and so far we'd only gotten inside the building and found a map. "We need to go into the basement lab," I told Fex, flipping through the pages and trying to figure out a route.
"Why the basement? Does it mark where the creature is?"
"No, but it should be in the basement. There are 2 large labs, one we need to cut through to get to the bottom. I mean, the basement for a man-eating monster is the best choice, because it needs to get through several layers up if it ever escaped. That might slow it down long enough for them to recapture it."
"Oh, that's clever."
It really wasn't, but I didn't feel like correcting Fex. Let him be impressed by simple things. The map was a bit on the lower quality side, and that slowed us down. It was hard to tell what hallway led where, and nearly impossible to read the longer names of some rooms. All we needed was the elevator. Things were going pretty well. Aside from getting lost, we finally found the elevator to the bigger lab below. Waiting until some workers passed by, I pressed the button to lead us down. Now I just needed to figure out how to kidnap a creature we knew nothing about and didn't want to be kidnapped. The doors dinged and opened. Lights hummed overhead, but no workers were inside the oversized basement lab. They either all left for a dinner break or didn't work at night. Movement near the side of a stainless steel table caught my eye. Out from behind a table came a creature sniffing the air and coming towards the elevator. It looked like a mixture of an armadillo and a dog. It was covered in segmented plates along its body and walked on long, thin legs. Its mouth was full of teeth so large and sharp it couldn't close its lips around them. I heard clicking of nails against the tile floor as more started to appear, sniffing the air. I felt as if I held very still, they wouldn't see me.
"Mason, I made the 2 charms to hide us from cameras and humans' eyes. Not supernatural creature eyes. These creatures can see us,"
Fex told me in a grave tone. Even though he was speaking to me inside my head, all of those creatures turned their heads toward the open elevator, staring right at us. I was really starting to hate my job. My finger reached for the elevator button on reflex. It took all my willpower to not run away and face my problems head on. And those problems were about 5 armadillo dogs with very sharp teeth. The first creature lunged forward to dig its teeth into my arm and shake its head, trying to tear it apart. My flesh was a bit more durable than I thought. I managed to endure the pain and drag the beast along with me and out of the elevator. Yes, this thing was trying to chew my arm off, but I didn't want to hurt it. It was like dog-shaped, and I'm a sucker for dog-shaped animals. Fex could have switched places with me, so he would experience the pain instead. I decided early on that I was not going to let him take a bullet if I could avoid it. I was a very bad hitman, but I took this job, and needed to learn how to do it instead of passing it off to Fex any chance I got. The dog-shaped creature was making short work of my arm and jacket. 2 of his friends came for my ankles, snapping at them, making very non-threatening yipping sounds. My arm was healing almost as fast as it was being chewed apart. Panic started to rise in my gut because I had no plan on how to deal with them. My brute strength may be strong enough to pry them off and toss them aside, but that didn't keep them from coming back to attack. Fex was the one who packed the handbag, and I had no idea what was inside, apart from the items I'd seen him pack before we left. I couldn't drop spells, and didn't even think there would be a magic solution that could resolve this situation peacefully. The options were to let them rip me apart, or hurt them to get them away.
"We'll use them as practice, like we did with the babies,"
Fex said. Taking control of my arm, he reached into the handbag and pulled out a paper with a pre-made spell I wasn't aware we had. All I needed to do to activate it was to stick the paper to the target and place a bloody thumbprint on the right spot. The paper would drain out the right amount of power to make the object it was attached to float. Fairly simple, but I needed to be careful. If I let the spell drain too much power, it would knock me on my ass, or worst case, outright fry my nerves beyond repair. I never used a spell on something this big before. Or alive. Fex was the one who suggested it. I just hoped I could trust him. One of the dogs came running at me, mouth open and drool flying. It clamped a powerful jaw onto my leg. It hurt like a bitch, but I somehow slapped the paper onto its head. Blood was easily available, so I covered a thumb to press it on the paper. The other dog creatures shook me, causing me to nearly miss my target. The pain of their teeth almost made me regret displaying any kind of mercy towards them. When the spell was completed, I felt the power drain from me. It's a hard thing to describe, aside from it sucks. It's almost like you're pulling threads out from under your skin with your fingertip. Fex promised me at some point there wouldn't be any pain when I used magic, but until then, I just needed to suffer with one of the world's most uncomfortable feelings. At first, nothing happened. The sharp teeth still dug in. Then, slowly, the paws of the first dog were no longer on the ground. Seeing it worked, I dug around for more pre-made spells to repeat the process. Without their feet on solid ground, they could no longer get any traction towards me. I pried the teeth and snapping jaws out of my tender flesh and pushed the floating armadillo dog away, their legs flailing, trying in vain to right themselves. Some of the dogs just gave up and let themselves float around, unsure of what to do. They only floated about 6 feet off the ground, a little taller than myself. If they got too close, they could try and bite off my face, but they really couldn't control where they drifted off to. I can't believe that worked, I said, mostly to myself. My wounds were nearly healed by then. My clothing was ruined where I was mauled. Nothing I could do about that.
I need to seal the elevator,
Fex told me before he took over my entire body and walked over to the still open elevator.
There must be cameras in this room. We may not show up because of our charms, but someone is bound to notice the creatures attacking an invisible person, and them now drifting around in the room.
He was right about that. His way of disabling the elevator was punching out the control panel. Here I was thinking he had another spell up his sleeve. Sometimes the simpler approach works. Isn't there any other way down here?
No, I studied the maps. This is the only way down to the lab. Seems a little bit foolish,
Fex replied to me. Only having one way down to the super secret monster lab did sound like a bit of a design flaw. It was a benefit to use, so I wasn't complaining. Hurrying through the lab, I took some glances around. Spell work and plants in jars made the place look more like a witch's study than a science lab. All the materials were beyond me, and I doubted Fex would be able to decipher the in-progress spells. They were made by humans, so he wouldn't understand the process. Judging by how difficult it was for humans to use magic, it was a miracle they had made a creature from it. We ran into a roadblock of the second elevator to the basement lab of where the creature was being held, needing a key to open. Again, my brain went to using a spell of some sort to copy the key or something along those lines. Fex again surprised me in his thought process. He took over and yanked the doors open using the strength our body was blessed with. Getting inside was the first step. We still needed to get it to work. Again, Fex did not bother with that. I was unaware of the fact that our hands could turn into the black claws that resembled Fex's. The sharp nails easily cut through the bottom of the elevator. With claws like these, we could have easily killed the dogs when they attacked. However, Fex understood I wanted to avoid killing if possible. What a horrible trait for a hitman to have. The sounds of metal tearing and being ripped apart was horrible. It cut our hands, but they healed too quickly for it to matter. My monster friend did not include me in his thought process of what we were going to do once we tore through the floor. So excuse me for screaming like a girl when we dropped through the opening, falling below at terrifying speed. I didn't know if we could heal from a drop like that. and I did not want to find out. My mind was a blank from fear, as it felt like I left my stomach up in the elevator. I needed to add falling from great heights to my list of things that scared me to death. I was out of commission. Thankfully, Fex wasn't. Just before we hit the floor, Fex slapped a paper on our chest. We stopped falling, and instead floated in place for a few seconds, and then collapsed to the ground. My heart was still beating, and I felt like I died 10 times over in that fall. I got up on shaky feet, trying to recover as Fex, in the back of my mind, beamed proudly.
"Oh, that worked."
I let out a garbled groan when I realized Fex didn't know if using our floating spell to stop our fall would actually save us. He just jumped to see what would happen. So far, Fex was the thing that endangered my life the most out of everything I'd encountered. I let him take over to claw the doors open because I was too shaken to do it myself. The basement lab was nothing like the one above. It was a mostly bare room with high ceilings. A metal safe stood on the far side of the room, and the only light came from the half of the room that was enclosed like a zoo exhibit. We finally saw the creature that we'd been tasked to kidnap or kill. To my shock, it looked a little like Fex. It was pure white and had a massive flowing mane of fur covering most of the upper half of its body. A lion-like tail twitched when it heard the doors being opened. Red eyes narrowed at us from behind the glass, making me nervous. And it was large. Double the size and height of a horse. I knew why Silverman wanted this monster away from humans. It could do a lot of damage if it was free. I didn't even have the slightest idea of how to deal with a monster this big. When we walked into the room, our footsteps echoing against the stone floor, the creature raised a pair of tall and long rabbit ears. The ears did nothing to make it look less terrifying. "It sort of looks like you," I commented to Fex as we walked by the glass, the monster following us.
"It is similar. I have a guess as to why. Let us open that steel box before dealing with this creature."
I nodded, and we went over to the safe. No magic again, just good old elbow grease and yanking the door off. Inside were some papers and a locked briefcase. Fex stuffed the papers inside our handbag without looking at them. Pulling out the briefcase, he looked it over, sensing it was trapped. We could easily rip it open, like the rest of the obstacles in our way, but not knowing the magic trap, we would be at risk. Fex studied it, sniffing the locks and staring at it. I assumed he would think of a counterspell, but of course not. He just ripped it open. Pain shot through my body as if I was being electrocuted, but on a non-lethal voltage. The trap wasn't powerful enough to kill us. A normal human would have been burnt to a crisp. We just had a bad time, because Fex decided to brute force it instead of wasting effort disabling the trap. Inside was a small vial with a few strands of black hair. Even with my dull senses, and it inside some glass, I could feel power flowing through those few strands. And it felt familiar.
"These came from the beast of the mains. I am assuming they used it to create the creature. I can sense human and rabbit inside that monster, making it a chimera of sorts. These hairs are dangerous. We will take them with us."
And slipping the vial safely inside the handbag, Fex turned towards the monster. But I still had questions. Does the beast that hair belongs to have any relation to you? I mean, it feels like it does, and this monster does sort of look like you. The beast behind the glass started to pace, getting agitated seeing us. I wasn't sure what kind of glass they used to keep it contained, and I didn't have much faith in it.
"I would suppose we are related in some way. The beast of the mains would be what you humans would call a step aunt. She is my mother's sister. But some creatures consider other beasts family if they have the same traits, opposed to them having the same genetic code. The beast of the mains is always causing trouble by giving away hair of her mane because she is so proud of it. I doubt she'll give the hunters any more if we steal these. If they didn't treasure it and lost them, she'll be very upset. It'll make it impossible to create another monster without this ingredient. Even if they are able to get something similar, the spell work they created won't hold, because magic is very picky.
In the few months of us knowing each other, Fex never spoke about his family before. I wasn't even sure if he had any. He had to come from somewhere, though. We had been so focused on trying to get my magical skills up to par, we never discussed anything personal. I had my own reasons to not talk about my family, but I wasn't aware he was the same. So this monster would be like your step-cousin or something?
No. I have been disowned by my family. I do not exist to them, and they have removed all mention of my name. I gave away my true name to a human, and brought the greatest dishonor to my tribe. I no longer have any family.
Now that sounded like a rather harsh punishment. I didn't have a good understanding of the supernatural world, but I could tell a monster's true name was a big deal. I couldn't help but think, what kind of human gained so much respect from Fex for him to trust his name, only to be betrayed? It was a sore topic, and I doubted Fex would ever want to talk about it. The snow-white beast paced behind the glass, ready to attack if we got too close. When it froze and eyes started to stare daggers at something beyond us, I turned to see a door on the other side of the room, hidden in darkness. Apparently, there was a hidden stairway down to the basement lab, not on our maps. Or the maps were of such poor quality we couldn't make it out. Our oversight put us in danger. I was now staring at 4 men dressed in SWAT gear, looking as surprised to see me as I was to see them. I couldn't even try to think of a plan when Fex's voice spoke inside my head.
Our charms have run out of power. They can see us.
Of course they can. A moment of shared confusion came between us. I broke the tension when I started to make a mad dash to hide behind the metal safe. Bullets tore through the air and slammed into me the second my feet moved. They hurt like hell. The bullets tore up the stone flooring and smashed against the glass holding the creature. It let out a loud hissing sound, very displeased of all the sudden noise. I was too busy trying to dive for cover to notice that the pure white creature started slamming its body on the barrier trying to get to us. While I ran, Fex took over my arms and lifted the frog-shaped handbag over our face. When I got behind the metal safe, the SWAT guys, or hunters, or whatever they were, stopped firing knowing it was a waste of ammo, until they came around for a better shot. The bullet wounds healed over the shards of bullet fragments, causing them to remain stuck where they were. The quick healing ability was nothing but a pain in the ass. I checked myself over, seeing if I was really still alive and if I was well enough to make a run for it if needed. Touching my face, it felt fine. Not a single bullet hit it, even though I only used the handbag for cover.
I enhanced Greg so he would be indestructible,
Fex explained to me. The handbag. The handbag he named. Looking it over, I didn't see a hint of a scratch on the green vinyl material. Out of all the things he could have used a spell like that on, he chose a handbag. I wish he'd used a sweater so the bullets didn't mess up my body as much as they had. I knew Fex wasn't human, but just kept forgetting what that really meant. His train of thought was nearly impossible to understand. How are we going to deal with this? I asked. I finally noticed the beast slamming against the glass, and it made me worried. Beast in front of me, and heavily trained and armed men behind. Fex stayed silent as he thought through his options. Each second that crept by made my stomach churn. The thudding of the white creature trying to get free made me jump every time. The men were moving slowly, not knowing what kind of a threat I was. Sweat rolled down the side of my face as I searched in my mind for anything that might help.
I hate to say this, but we are at an impasse. You cannot fight them in your current skill level. If I take over, I risk killing one by accident. Perhaps we should...
I never heard the end of Fex's thought. The beast took a running start at the glass and finally smashed through it. I covered my face, trying to keep the pieces from flying into my eyes. Thousands of shards tinkled to the ground. This was bad. Very bad. The creature met my eyes with enraged red ones. The SWAT men immediately started firing, getting its attention from me. Roaring in sheer rage, the creature tore its gaze from me and went right for the 4 men. The bullets did nothing to slow it down. I got up from my hiding spot at the same time the beast started to move. By luck, I grabbed one of the men out of the way of its massive claws that nearly cut him in 2. More shots came, and the beast turned towards them, ready to attack. If I didn't do something, these men would be dead. The man I saved pushed away from me, raising his weapon. I snapped my head towards him, my expression alone enough to make him pause. "Get the hell out of here! Do you think you can fight that?" I yelled at him. We both turned to see one of the men in SWAT gear getting backhanded so hard he bounced off the floor twice before rolling to a stop. His gear may have saved him from the claws, but not from the broken bones from hitting the ground at such a force. Groaning, he did not get back up. Whatever weapons they brought, they were not enough to face that creature that the lab created.
"I'm letting you 2 fight to the death. Then I'm shooting the winner," the SWAT guy told me.
I looked at his chest to see a VG stitched on it. I wondered if he was the leader of the small group. I gave him a nod. VG ran to grab his fallen comrade, and I let Fex take over. He could use my body better than I would ever be able to. With strength I wasn't aware we had, Fex grabbed the white creature by one of its back legs and started to drag it away from the last 2 men. One was bleeding from a massive cut on his stomach. The other had a gun raised, but looked pale and unsure what to do.
"Leave now. You are only human,"
Fex growled at the man, using my body. Normally, Fex only talked inside my head. It was very rare he spoke out loud for others to hear. His deep growl of a voice was enough to get the man to collect the injured one and start heading towards the door. If they only knew about the handbag name, they wouldn't be so scared of Fex, no matter how he sounded. Now we needed to keep this creature distracted long enough for the SWAT guy to escape. With a powerful kick, we were tossed aside. Fex was more graceful than the rest of us and righted himself.
"This body is troublesome,"
he growled while kicking off our shoes. Fex was a 4-legged creature, like the beast facing us. So far, he had done very well, getting adjusted to taking over a human body. It was only then I realized Fex was having just as hard of a time as I was with a new body. I didn't understand magic, and he didn't understand how to fight with only 2 legs. Keeping the monster in front of us at bay would be a difficult task. Getting down low, he put all of his power into our legs to start running. The white creature was almost as fast as us. It snapped its jaws, snagging our shirt and tearing a part off of it. Swiping razor-sharp claws, Fex didn't dodge fast enough to avoid spilling blood. While Fex controlled my body, I could still see what was happening. But I was unsure of what to do. We didn't have any weapons that could damage the monster, and the spells we could perform were on the low end. Having a plan before we just rushed in would have been the better idea. If only we could tire the monster out enough for it to be bound. Darting around, Fex kept taking damage to our body. He blocked out the pain on my end, but I could tell every slash hurt like hell. Dodging most of the attacks, he circled the beast twice. We healed, but our blood remained spilled all over the stone floor of the room. The beast was getting more frustrated and sloppier with its movements. If it enclosed those jaws on us, we were done for. Jumping back, Fex avoided those snapping jaws once again. Specks of saliva came flying from the creature's mouth, and eyes narrowed in a hateful glare. As Fex moved away, he dragged 4 fingers along the ground, making 4 lines of blood. I felt a pull I recognized as magic being used, and didn't understand what Fex just did. As far as I could tell, he didn't use a spell. Until I noticed that in all that moving and dodging, Fex was getting slashed for a reason. A circle of blood trapped the creature when Fex finished the sloppy spell work. The beast let out a screech of rage and slammed into an invisible wall Fex had created. The aftershock of the beast running into the wall was enough to push us back a few feet.
"If you use some material as powerful as your own blood, you can create a spell without the need for words or a perfect circle,"
Fex explained. even though now was not the time. He was stressed and breathing hard from all the running around and using such a large amount of magic. But at least we weren't dead. When the beast found out it was trapped inside the misshapen circle, it went completely feral. It thrashed around, tearing into the ground, and did more damage to itself than the SWAT guys did. Opening its mouth wide, a small ball of light appeared. The light ball launched, hitting against the invisible wall and exploding, filling the room with smoke and shaking the ground. Coughing and eyes stinging from the smoke, Fex still tried to watch the monster. One ball made it out from the barrier and flew into the ceiling, creating a large hole, which rubble and tables fell through. The crash of a steel table hitting the ground echoed. I only hope the dog creatures we faced earlier weren't in the lab anymore, or weren't floating near where the room exploded.
I am aware you would like to solve this problem without killing the monster, but I am afraid that is impossible.
Fex started, and I wanted to argue with him. I would listen to his reasoning before I talked back.
We could only hold it like this for a few minutes. We have no way of binding it, and cannot bring it anywhere safely. The light it is shooting off is an internal magic source. Once it's gone, the monster shall die. I cannot stop it from exhausting that power, and I believe it is too feral to realize what it is doing.
If we're not strong enough to hold it, we're not strong enough to kill it. Can't we just call in for some backup? I felt Fex pause, trying to think through his words carefully.
Killing it is easy. We could have killed it before it even got through the glass. The non-lethal options are the hardest. Mason, I respect you are doing your best to try and save this creature, but the beast is too far gone.
I looked over to the vague shape inside the smoke. I heard it screeching. It was angry and in pain. More of the light came crashing against the barrier and cracked the ceiling above. I knew Fex was telling the truth, and yet I still didn't want to accept it. The monster had done nothing wrong. It was made to be a weapon, and now we needed to kill it for just being alive. It left a bitter taste in my mouth. There has to be something we can do, I said, knowing every second was one wasted.
I know how you feel, but I also know how this creature feels. The best thing we can do for it is to kill it.
My throat locked up when I heard Fex speak. He still had control of our body. I felt power pooling in our palm, concentrating into one point. It wasn't visible, but it felt burning hot. If our hand touched anything, that heat would be transferred to the object. Fex had pulled up so much power to kill the white-maned beast so quickly. He really was perfect for being a hitman and killing whatever was tasked of him. I wasn't. I was holding him back. I felt our body moving forward and towards the monster to kill it. Everything inside my mind screamed at my body to stop moving. In that moment, I felt as if we killed this monster just because it was in the hands of people who could use it as a threat would justify Fex's feelings. When he was being controlled by his true name, he felt like he should die. The night we met, he was ready for that outcome. It was something he wanted for all the pain he was forced to cause. He didn't want this beast to go through the same thing, so he chose to kill it. It just all felt wrong. Through the smoke and beyond the beast, I saw a figure come through the door the SWAT guys had left from. Someone wearing white running towards us. I heard a voice just before we reached the beast with our arm outstretched, ready to kill.
Please don't kill her. It's not Monty's fault.
Between the two of us, Fex had the stronger will. If he wanted to take over my body, he could do it at any time. It was only because he was a good and polite monster that he didn't. In that moment, when I heard the new figure cry out, confirming my feelings, I pushed back with everything I had. Fex was caught off guard. Instead of slamming his palm into the beast, he fell forwards and slammed his hand into the ground, causing a huge backlash and knocking us both out for a few minutes. I sat up, head pounding and feeling frantic. A few seconds meant death near a beast like the one we were facing. So why was I not dead yet? Looking around, I saw the man in a white lab coat next to the sleeping form of the snow-white monster. How did you... I asked. My body ached and my head pounded. The hand that received the most of the backlash hadn't healed yet, and it throbbed with white-hot pain.
In secret, I made a tranquilizer for Monty. I was planning on sneaking her out someday when she was stable, but...
He was on the younger side, his lab coat far too big for him. Barely an adult with huge round glasses. He looked scared and pale. In front of him was a small tranquilizer gun. Pulling out a vial of purple liquid, he reloaded it. How long does that last for? We could still get her out, I said, feeling almost hopeful.
Only 20 minutes. I have enough to keep her asleep for an hour. I don't even know how we could get her out of here. She was brought down as a baby and grew bigger than we ever imagined. She won't fit through the stairs.
That was true. Looking between the doorway to the stairway and back at the monster, I could easily see she wouldn't fit. I looked at the holes in the ceiling, trying to think if we could just float her up through a hole. Then we ran into her not fitting into the elevator shaft. Unless there was a magic spell to shrink her, this beast was not getting out of the basement in an hour. Then I remembered the spells Fex used to transport us around. As far as I could tell, it was just a circle spell done in the chalk we put inside the handbag. Fex, could we do a transport spell and get her out of here? I asked out loud out of habit. The man gave me a look, confused. There's 2 of us in here, I commented back at him. Saying that made me sound crazy. Until Fex also spoke out loud. He took over using a different voice and facial expressions, so it truly looked like a different person was speaking.
A slim chance, yes. I would need to add to the spell to allow more than one creature being moved. However, I do not know of a safe spot to hold her. Once this beast is awake, she shall attack, until either one of us is dead.
When Fex started to speak, the man looked surprised, seeing the sudden shift. He quickly accepted it and let the shock drop from his face. Checking on Monty, he looked back to us, his mind running a mile a minute.
You're not human, correct? You might know more than myself. Our organization is functioning on scraps of information, and every creature is too different. It's difficult to find a common rule between creatures of the night. Monty has moments of clarity after eating sometimes. I believe she can get to the point of calm reasoning. What can we do to snap her out of her feral nature?
I could tell Fex felt like we were wasting our time. We only had an hour to talk through the situation, and by some miracle, figure out a way to deal with Monty without having to kill her. Once the hour was up, we would go back to trying to kill her. And I didn't know if I could stop him this time.
Anything I tell you shall be guesswork. I do not know the rules of every beast out there, and she was created by humans to start with. I would not know the solution to this issue, simply because I am not human. The only one with such advanced knowledge of creatures of the night is the Silver King. And...
Oh, Silverman might know? Why don't we just call him up and ask for help? My suggestion hit Fex so hard he could not respond until he recovered from his shock. The man adjusted his glasses and looked at me confused again.
I thought the Silver King went by Lirin.
Oh, that was the last one. Apparently he changes his personality and appearance every 10 years or so, but somehow it's the same person. Don't ask me how that works. I'm new to this. By then, Fex had recovered, and he stood to face us, fuming and face red. He couldn't even form words, he was so flustered by my offhand question.
Call him? Call the Silver King? Mason, are you insane? What makes you think... Alright, first of all, where do I even start on how wrong that is? That's like calling up God because you need help getting a cat out from a tree. He gave us this job, and it is beneath him to even humor a request for help.
Fex was getting himself more and more worked up by the second. The thought of Silverman coming in to save the day mortified him. The man was beyond a god in his eyes. I didn't think he was all that special. During his rant, Monty stirred and needed to be drugged again to remain still. I knew the clock was ticking and we should get back on track. Okay, yeah, I get that, but is there a magic way to get in contact with him for, emergencies? I asked slowly. The back and forth between frantic and calm on our face must have looked very strange to the man watching us.
Well, yes. But, alright, I shall let you try. He answers the call if he deems it worthy. You may call, and I am certain you shall get no answer. But do so if it makes you feel better.
It really didn't hurt to at least try. The current options were running dry. If Silverman came by for a few minutes, I was sure he could tell us something to keep Monty alive and sane. Fex let out a loud sigh and instructed me to get on my knees and place my forehead against the ground. After that was done, all I needed to do was repeat, "Silver King, oh my Silver King, please come to my aid," and wait. It was the most embarrassing moment of my life, and that was saying something. I felt my face flush after I repeated the words, and not because blood rushed to my head from being so low. At least I knew my only witness wouldn't care about the display, as long as I got results. As the seconds ticked by and turned to minutes, I felt like our last hope had drained away. Getting up, I felt silly for even trying.
Oh, you boys better have a good reason for calling me here.
I jumped at Silverman's voice, and turned to see him walking over to me and stopped a few steps away. And he looked miffed. Fex shrank back, leaving me behind to deal with this. Coward. Silverman was holding his suit jacket, and his hair was slightly a mess. It was the most unkempt I'd ever seen him. I stuttered, suddenly unable to speak.
Is that the beast I sent you here for? Why is it not dead?
His red eyes glared at me. I opened my mouth to speak, but he snapped at me.
Sit down.
It was either by his power or because of Fex taking control, but I sat down, looking at the floor like a child being scolded. The other man sat down next to me, looking just as nervous as I was.
Do you have any idea what you dragged me away from? I was this close to getting in with... No, never mind.
I looked up at him, no longer as nervous as before. In fact, I sneered at him, full well knowing he'd been trying to fool around with someone when he heard our call. It was his job to help supernatural creatures, and he was getting mad he needed to do his job in the middle of a date. How did Fex respect this kind of a guy?
I'm a huge fan,
the man beside me commented, not knowing what else to say.
What's your name?
Silverman asked while looking over.
Montgomery. I'm the lead mage for the team that created Monty.
Silverman studied the man's face for a long while. It made him flustered, and Montgomery kept looking away, unable to keep eye contact.
You're cute enough. Explain to me what's going on,
Silverman said finally with a wave of his hand. Was that all it really took? And since when do mages wear lab coats? I sat and listened as Montgomery explained we needed to figure out a way to make Monty calm enough to change her way of thinking, so she wouldn't attack humans in less than an hour. I kept an eye on Monty, feeling nervous every time she shifted in her sleep. She could kill the mage beside me if she woke up, and Silverman might not do anything about it.
You called me here for that? Fex should have guided you along on a train of thought to an answer.
I felt Fex cringe inside my head as Silverman kept talking.
First off, what do creatures eat? Humans, Montgomery answered with a hint of rage in his tone. Bingo. Now why do they eat humans?
Neither of us could answer. Not once did I ever think of a reason. I mean, why does any animal eat anything? Seeing us dumbfounded, Silverman explained.
Every creature is different, but in general, creatures of the night target humans because they give more power for less effort. Most creatures change when they gain more power. They become smart and can think for themselves better. Monty's on the low end of the power level, so she needs to eat human flesh to get to the point of being sentient. I have heard of this, but it's really just a theory in mage circles. I know we're low on time, but could you answer why some creatures turn more into a human-like form and gain a human kind of understanding?
He was right. We were low on time, but Montgomery's face was flushed with excitement over learning something new. I didn't have the heart to make him drop it.
Simple. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Looking human is easier to blend in and hunt.
The mage's face fell, not liking the answer. He shook his head, getting back on topic.
So, Monty just needs to eat a lot of human flesh? That doesn't help us at all. Isn't there any other way?
He nearly begged. Silverman looked at him, then back to me as if trying to give me a clue I wasn't understanding. When I didn't get what his silent look was trying to say, he shook his head.
No, I'm afraid not. The issue is what she is. You essentially force millions of pieces together that don't fit and created cracks. She could eat 1 million humans, and because of those cracks, the power she would gain by eating would leak out until she became strong enough to heal them. Now, virgin flesh and blood gives at least 100 times the power of a non-virgin, so that's the fastest option.
So we just need to find a few thousand virgins to sacrifice to save her in less than an hour? Great. If you meant virgin by never been used in a ritual before, we might actually have a chance, if we were willing to kill people.
Oh no, I meant it in a biblical sense. Is that the right word? Anyway, you know what I mean. But if you follow my line of thought, you'll understand why I'm so angry you called me over here. You have one that can heal over and over again. If you boys just thought through it, you would have figured it out.
I felt my face turn red right to my ears. Montgomery looked at Silverman, not at all understanding what he meant. He looked to the right and left of himself, expecting to see another person in the room. God, I really wish people would stop bringing up that one little fact about myself every chance they got. When Montgomery finally clued in, he also looked embarrassed.
You're...
Shut up! I hissed so quickly it was one syllable. We did not look at each other for a while. Monty can live and become reasonable if she eats me a few thousand times? I asked finally.
That is a problem. We cannot possibly heal or live through that.
Feck spoke for the first time since Silverman entered. If that was the case, we were back at square one. Monty was stirring and would need to be given the tranquilizer soon. Silverman looked down on how hard we were thinking, trying to figure a way out of this mess. He made a motion for me to stand up. Feeling a little nervous he was just going to scold me again, I stood, waiting for it.
Since I'm already here, I do not wish my trip to be a waste. I can help you. However, my help comes at a cost. Are you truly willing to put yourself through this much pain for a creature?
Silverman asked in a serious tone. I don't want Fex to go through that. This is my choice not to kill her. He shouldn't suffer because of it.
That is easily done. By doing this, you shall be responsible for her future actions. If Monty turns into a killer, getting revenge on the hunters who made her, how would you feel about that? Why risk such a thing for a beast?
He was bringing up fair points. I looked over at Monty sleeping and jerking a little at our voices. A sharp pain came to my chest when I could easily see Fex in the same position. He was ready to die the night we met. After meeting him, and yes, even with his strange teenage girl interests, I was glad he was alive. I shouldn't be judging Monty based on those things. I knew nothing about her. She could become a killer. Then again, she might not. It felt wrong to condemn her based on past actions she had no control over. I just feel as if they have the right to live, I said, finally turning my eyes back to Silverman. He gave me a smile, not doubting my choice any longer. I was locked into doing the only thing I could to save Monty, but I was nearly scared to death about doing it. It would hurt over and over again, and for who knew how long. Killing her would be so much easier, but I knew in the long run I would never forgive myself if I did it. Silverman snapped his fingers. The air shifted around us, but only so slightly that I barely felt anything. Looking up, I saw nothing beyond the holes in the ceiling. Where the lab above once was, now was a pitch-black space. Walking away from me, he took Montgomery by the arm and lifted him off the floor.
I disconnected this space from the rest of the world. Time shall not pass for you, and no one shall die here. It will only return to normal after Monty gains her sanity,
Silverman explained. And he was a few feet away from me when he stopped walking, but still kept a hand on the mage's shoulder. The man looked confused at what was happening, but also impressed by what Silverman could do.
Mason, I am unsure how I feel about you doing this,
Fex told me, and I could feel how scared he was. I didn't get a chance to reply to him.
Fex, go to sleep. You shall awake when this place reconnects to the world,
Silverman ordered. That was all it took. I felt Fex drift off, and for the first time since getting this new body, I was alone. No monster in the back of my mind watching me. Just my own thoughts. It felt so strange after having someone around for so long. I felt exposed and much smaller without Fex with me.
Now Montgomery is going to stay here and watch everything.
I felt the blood rush from my face. My knees felt weak as I stared at Silverman in shocked horror. He really couldn't mean that. Montgomery couldn't watch me getting mauled over and over again. Seeing such a sight would mess him up beyond all repair. Pushing him down, Montgomery fell into a chair that suddenly appeared under him. Silver ropes came from the ground and tied him to the spot before he could even speak a word of protest. He looked scared out of his mind. "Silverman, you bastard!" I hissed and took a step forward, only to run into an invisible wall.
He only needs to watch. You and Monty cannot cross over that line to harm him. Both of you need to already start facing the consequences of your actions. By refusing to kill that beast behind you, you shall suffer, Mason. And this man needs to witness what he helped bring into the world.
I was stunned. I didn't know Silverman was so cold and calloused. One minute he was getting snide about leaving his date, and now he was forcing a man into mental torture. I just wanted Monty to live. I never wanted anyone besides myself to be hurt because of my choice. I couldn't do anything to stop it. I slammed my fists on the invisible wall, cursing out Silverman when I felt the worst pain I felt until that point. Monty woke up. Unaware of her movement behind me, she snapped her strong jaws with so many sharp teeth sideways into my gut. Blood rushed into my lungs and into my mouth. There was nothing I could do to stop her. Tossing me aside, my body rolled to a stop, leaving a trail of blood behind. The massive wounds were already healing around the edges. This should have killed any normal person, and I was unlucky to not only be not normal, but also dumb enough to stand on morals. From where I laid, I could see Montgomery tied in places, looking as if he was going to be sick. I never wanted him to see any of this. I didn't want someone to be hurt because of my actions. I learned that day that sometimes others got harmed if you only meant the damage to be for yourself. There is no string of words in English or any language to describe what it feels to be ripped apart again and again. I'm sure some come close, and you could have a vague idea of the pain, but until you experience such a thing, you would never actually know how it feels. The main issue is my body and mind did not go into shock for a very long time. My theory is shock helps you stay alive. Due to my body's quick healing and durability, it knew I wasn't going to die and did not block out any of the pain. I could be wrong. Maybe Silverman did something else to make sure I suffered. I couldn't even tell you how long I was torn apart, every organ eaten again and again. I prayed for it to stop, for my mind to stop working, to only be tormented by every second those things did not come to pass. When it did finally end, I thankfully was too far gone to recognize it. I fell into nothingness for a long time. When I woke up, coming out of that black nothing, I found myself in a comfy bed. My bed at the temporary penthouse. I knew I was safe, but I still shot up, scrambling against the wall. Dragging blankets with me, I curled up in a corner, breathing heavily, expecting to be attacked again. I could tell Fex was still asleep in the back of my mind, but at least he was there. Curling up with my knees against my chest, I let myself sob, knowing I needed to get it out or else I would never recover from the trauma. Keeping it all inside would nearly kill me. I expected Fex to wake up to see how I was doing while I was sobbing. He stayed asleep, and I got my sobbing fit out of the way. My hands shook, and I felt awful, but at least somewhat more myself. Looking at my hands, I saw that my nails were long. I must have been asleep for a few days, and Fex didn't trim them. Rubbing the leftover tears from my eyes, I froze when I smelled something familiar. Cigarette smoke coming from somewhere in the penthouse. My first instinct was to run, but if it was who I thought, I should go over and give them an earful. Inside the kitchen was the source of the smell. Silverman sat, a lit cigarette dangling between two fingers and a book in one hand. A half-eaten orange sat in front of him. I wanted to scream at him, but my body was still so tired. "I didn't know you smoked," I said finally. He didn't even look up at me.
"On occasion."
My father smoked that brand. He finally met my eyes. Closing his book, he placed it on the table and put out his smoke. The smell still lingered in the air. He reminded me of my late father. I'm sure if I admitted that to certain people, they would have all sorts of theories over what that meant. Of course, it didn't mean anything. They were both bastards, and for some reason I could forgive that. "How's Montgomery?" I asked, my voice cracking with emotion. The image of his face being forced to watch my guts being ripped out would haunt me forever.
"He's recovering. Slowly, but getting there. It's best if you don't see him again."
I nodded, a pain deep in my chest. "And Monty? How did she turn out?"
"Oh, her? She's just fine. I wonder if eating so much of you influenced her in some way. She felt so terrible over what she'd done, I think she's doing her best to do good in the world. She started up a very small organization to help orphan creatures of the night."
A wave of relief came through me. My muscles stopped tensing as I relaxed a little. I still had the memories of the pain, but it was less of a burden knowing it meant something. My hands still trembled at my sides, making me wonder if they would ever be steady again. "Already? She's a fast worker," I commented, and Silverman gave me a raised eyebrow.
"Mason, what day do you think it is?"
I didn't have an answer. When I woke up, I had assumed only a few days had passed. I felt my hair brush against my neck when I shook my head, and realized that shouldn't happen. It had grown. How long was I sleeping for? Weeks? Months?
"It's 2040.
I narrowed my eyes at the silver-haired man, not liking his joke.
"All right, it's 2001. You've been asleep for a year. Fex has been doing the odd job for me and keeping your body in shape, though."
My jaw dropped a little. A year had gone by? An entire year? My mind just shut down for that amount of time? I had stopped aging because of Fex, so in the long run, a full year wasn't a big deal. Still, it felt like I had a lot to catch up on. Don't you ever do your own job? How long have you been here avoiding it? He glanced at his half-finished book, giving away he was hiding out at my place for a few hours. Getting the hint, he shook his head and got up from his seat. Placing the book on the table, I wondered if that was a sign that he would be back for it.
"Fine, I'm gone. Fex wants to speak with you anyway. I bet he's a mess."
As if on cue, I heard Fex's voice in my head. A loud gasp, and my chest tightened with a mix of emotions from both myself and his own. Still, I wondered if Silverman was here checking up on me, or if he really was just ducking out on his duties. The next few weeks after I woke up was a blur of days. I found myself not being able to do anything but sit in front of the TV, not really watching it. Fex tried his best to get me to start on my magic training again. Every time I even thought about it, the memory of Monty came back and my hands trembled. I kept getting sick and was unable to eat. He was giving me time to get over that trauma, but wasn't human and didn't understand what I was going through, or how to help. The only thing that cheered me up, even the slightest, was when I found a new plushie Fex assumed was hidden. And when I saw Greg, I almost smiled. The damn thing didn't even have a mark on it. And yet both myself and Montgomery never got past what happened. I was unsure of how much time passed while I was in that state. Until one day, when I heard a knock at the door. Fex didn't have any friends. I didn't have any either. Silverman would just walk in. I didn't have the faintest idea of who it could be. Fex told me he didn't sense any danger from behind the door. The curiosity got the better of me. Carefully, I opened my front door and was face to chest with a stranger. Literally face to chest. We both stepped back to see each other better. She was so tall, she didn't even fit inside the doorframe. I looked up, face flushed from where my eyes were a few seconds before. Staring at her, confused, it took an embarrassingly long time until it all clicked and I knew who she was. She was dressed in a button-down dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. White fur covered her arms, and her hands were more like animal claws than human. Her face was human, but it was surrounded by long white hair. Bunny ears poked up from where normal ears should be, giving her extra height. With her ears, she might be 8 feet tall. Looking back down at her claws, I knew those claws better than her face. "Monty?" I asked slowly. She looked down at me, chewing on her bottom lip and unable to think of where to start. I saw a lion-like tail swishing behind her nervously. Dress pants were also rolled up, so her fur-covered animal legs were showing, and most likely so she could move better. "Is this a bad idea?" she asked, fidgeting. I thought I might never be able to see her face again. Not after everything that happened. My shoulders started to tense up. My brain screamed at me to run. She looked friendly, but my body remembered the pain those claws inflicted. Suddenly, she bowed down at the waist, her long ears at either side of me, nearly headbutting me on the way down. "Thank you for saving me." I felt my face turn red again. Not only because she sounded so genuine, but because her buttons on her shirt sprang off and scattered on the floor when she bowed. She was gifted in areas, but also she had massively powerful shoulders straining the buttons beyond their breaking point. Straightening up, she kept her hands in front of her chest, trying to protect some modesty. Thankfully, she was wearing a white tank top under her dress shirt, but it didn't help much. "I, have a coat you can borrow," I offered, averting my eyes. "Oh, thank you, but you're so short, it won't fit." That honest truth cut me deep. I had nothing that would fit her. I should offer her a blanket or towel for cover, but Monty didn't even look the slightest bit embarrassed over her wardrobe mishap. I guessed it happened often. Unable to stop myself, I snickered. She joined in and laughed a little, her sharp teeth showing. Somehow, they didn't bother me as much as before. "I do mean it, though. You saved me when you could have taken the easy way out. If I can do anything for you, and I mean it, anything at all, please tell me." There was a very attractive rabbit monster girl in front of me offering to do anything for me. Her shirt barely stayed closed as her claws gripped the fabric and her eyes darted around nervously. I said the only thing any decent person in that situation would say. "You don't owe me anything. If possible, I just want you to be happy. And not kill anyone if you can help it." She looked down at me, red eyes wide, not believing what I was saying. Then she smiled. A real smile that showed off her dimples. Everything I'd gone through was worth it after seeing her. "You are a very strange, small man, but I am glad to know you." That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me. Anyway, can I give you a blanket to cover up? I know you could take any guy that would try to do anything, but I don't like the idea of people seeing you with your shirt open like that. Oh, don't worry, I am a supernatural creature. Other humans cannot see me or interact with me. So I've been talking to myself this whole time? To other humans, yes. I would need to be more careful with that in the future. It was bad enough I had a monster inside my head I talked with. I didn't need people watching me talk to empty air at the same time. Monty gave me an awkward goodbye and promised she would contact me again in the future. I was glad she dropped by. She must have been scared and so nervous seeing me, and whatever reaction I may have towards her. Logically, I should be scared to death of her. For a few moments, I was. Then I could see just how well she turned out and felt a bit of pride in my chest. By keeping her alive, I should feel any consequences of her actions, positive or negative. After she left, my stomach growled. I hadn't eaten in who knows when. Ordering something in would be a good idea.
Mason, you are aware that creatures have a favor-based system, correct?
Fex asked, with a hint of curiosity in his voice. I think you explained it to me. Nothing's free for you guys. The more powerful the creature is, the more a favor is worth for them, right?
Yes. A simple version of that system. On the rare occasions a creature saved another's life, they are indebted to them until the debt is waived or the creature dies. Monty is truly indebted to you. You could have asked anything from her.
I know.
Anything.
I clued in to what Fex was implying and shook my head, not believing it. Here I thought Fex was a decent kind of monster. Fex, I am not going to take advantage of Monty. She's like your cousin, sorta. And besides, it's just wrong. I'm ashamed that even crossed your mind, even if it is part of your culture. A long moment passed between us. I really was disgusted by the idea that someone with lesser morals than myself may have made Monty do something she didn't want. No wonder she looked so upset when she first saw me. She expected our meeting to go in a completely different direction. I needed to change that way of thinking, for both her and Fex.
You are a very kind human. No wonder you are still a...
It's by choice! My voice was seeped in venom. Fex rightfully stayed silent for a long while after that. My second job of being a hitman ended with no casualties. Aside from some mental trauma and a small tremble in my hands, everyone got away with minor injuries. As someone who was hired to kill people and creatures, I have a bad track record. But honestly, I'm alright being bad at my job. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. Today's video was supported by patrons like Mark from Earth, Crimson Muse, Joy Burton, Diane Showers, Mark Zawal, Cheryl James, Pick Your Sticker, Teddy Dog, Clue 404, Mamakato, Dante Kincaid, Zarin Ray, Angela Donovan, Blarian 50, Devin Kyle, Timothy Baird, Ajeti, Bert Turner, Bajani Aspinall, Michael Pierce, Big Joe, Carrie Harkonnen, LaDonna Spivey, Scott Tanaka, Tom Stewart, Sherman Davis, Bryce Shelton, Susan McClendon, Elise Batiste, Lisa and the Cult Jam, Open Circuit, Fabulavore, Raymond Jaggers, That Darn Fox, Raison Detra, Kai Gaming 99, Windy Burns, The Wendigo, Michael Squishy Park, The Gemstar, Vault 77 Citizen, Puppy Dan, Clovis Wolf, Elder Jelm, Derek Prey, Elder Being, KC Hawaii, Rob T, Tragic Mermaid, Darren Fishnaller, Cloves Anoy Harris, Roe Underwood, Florida Man Luke, Bethany's Mom, Winter's Kiss, Sam Brook, The White Stag, Corgi Connection, No Name, Marta Cara, Professor Elm, Kathy Barrickman, Cybard Sands, Steve Hennessy, Melanie Sanders, The Archivist, Rob Smith, Term 4, Naz Razio, J. David Wellman Jr., Parker Lewis, Monica Moya, D-Master 311, Britt the Alchemist, Taylor the Fox, Holly Howarth, Julia McWilliam, Lily Pad, Serena and Jesse, Diego Rodriguez, Osiel Perez, Wolfcat 128, Kamisha Coffin, Jen Scott, Avanza, Lucien Haran Allen, Hunter Nystrom, Tyson Harris, Ricky Monroe, Jess Gaming, Mastiff Nomad, James Lowe, Alabama Nana, Jessica Hunt, Kelly Savory, Chris Zamora, Dave, EL, Michelle Angel Wolf, and Linda Allison. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you get access to bonus videos and content, as well as a Discord channel. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. It really does help a lot. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night. They were small, glittery, metal bacon and egg. There was no way he picked those charms out, because the material held...